Anthony Bourdain's first love story was as complex as the man himself. When beloved chef and storyteller Anthony Bourdain tragically passed away in 2018, the world mourned not just a culinary icon, but a man whose life was filled with deep passion, endless curiosity, and complicated relationships. While many knew about his romantic ties to actress Asia Argento or his estranged marriage to Octavia Bija Bourdain, the mother of his only daughter, fewer are familiar with the woman who stood beside him for over 2 decades, his first wife, Nancy Putkowski. Theirs was a love story that began in high school and endured through Bourdain's rise from line cook to global television sensation. Yet, like many of Bourdain's life experiences, it was beautiful, messy, intense, and ultimately unsustainable. Anthony Bourdain first met Nancy Putkowski while attending Dwight Englewood, a private high school in New Jersey. She was older, rebellious, and part of what Bourdain himself described as the bad crowd. But it wasn't her edginess that pushed him away. It was exactly what pulled him in. Nancy was different. She was bold, independent, and unapologetically herself. Bourdain was smitten. In fact, he was so drawn to her that he accelerated his own graduation and followed her to Vassar College, an elite women's college that had only just begun accepting men. At just 17, Bourdain found himself not only navigating young adulthood, but also stepping into a romantic relationship that would define much of his early adult life. Despite their strong bond, Bourdain's years at Vassar were marked by exploration, both academic and personal. He later admitted that being one of the few men on campus exposed him to a wide range of experiences and relationships. Eventually, he left Vassar to attend the Culinary Institute of America, where his love for food became more than a hobby. It became his life's calling. But through all of these transitions, Nancy remained in his life. They married in the 1980s and stayed together for nearly 20 years. Bourdain often referred to Nancy as his partner in crime and credited her with being a constant presence as he discovered his path through kitchens, addiction, recovery, and eventually success. However, when fame came knocking in the early 2000s, everything shifted. After the release of his groundbreaking memoir, Kitchen Confidential, and his first TV series, A Cook's Tour, Bourdain's world expanded overnight. He was suddenly traveling nonstop, exploring new cultures and becoming a household name. And while many would celebrate this kind of breakthrough, Nancy saw the writing on the wall. In Bourdain's own words, she identified television early on as an existential threat to the marriage. She wasn't wrong. As Bourdain became consumed by travel, storytelling, and a relentless quest for newness, the emotional gap between them widened. He admitted that while he felt a surge of energy from the road, Nancy viewed it as a kind of cancer, something eating away at the foundation they had built together. Their split in 2005 wasn't marked by scandal or bitterness, but rather a deep sadness and mutual recognition that they were growing in opposite directions. Bourdain would later call their divorce his great betrayal. He acknowledged that his ambition, his unquenchable thirst for experience, and the personal changes he underwent ultimately cost him the person he once considered the love of his life. Still, Nancy never stepped into the public spotlight, not before their divorce, and not after Bourdain's death. She preferred a quiet life, one without fame, interviews, or attention. In fact, when the 2021 documentary Roadrunner was released, her voice was notably absent, a deliberate choice that left some wondering more about the woman who had once been his closest confidant. In a 2017 feature by The New Yorker, journalist Patrick Radden Keefe revealed that Nancy once said her ideal level of fame would be that of a Supreme Court justice. Almost nobody knows what you look like, but you always get the reservation you want. That single sentence captured Nancy Putkowski perfectly. Sharp, private, and intentionally mysterious. The final crack in their relationship came from something deeply personal to Bourdain, his first trip to Vietnam. Describing it as a source of perfect happiness, Bourdain said Vietnam altered how he saw the world. He returned home changed, spiritually awakened, and emotionally distant. Though he tried to explain the magic he found overseas, the words fell flat in their once shared space. The disconnection grew and the marriage faded. Still, Bourdain never stopped speaking of Nancy with a tone of reverence and sadness. "She was the love of my life," he once said, "but everything changed." While Nancy Putkoski may never sit for interviews or write a tell-all, her influence on Anthony Bourdain's life is undeniable. She was there before the fame, before the food shows, before the world came to know the chef with the gritty voice and poetic soul. And even in her silence, her presence lingers, etched into the earliest chapters of a man who spent his life chasing the unfamiliar. Bourdain's journey was one of constant motion, a restless push towards something greater, deeper, more meaningful. But in the story of Nancy and Anthony, we see something different, a man who once stood still, deeply in love with a woman who shaped the man he became before the world ever knew his name. If this glimpse into Anthony Bourdain's lesser-known love story moved you, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Star Buzz for more untold chapters from the lives of the world's most compelling icons.